On Air with Douglas, where fans are connected to their favorite celebrities. And now, here's your host, Douglas.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to On Air with Douglas. I am your host, Douglas, and tonight we're going to be continuing our Where Are They Now type episodes, or like how Oprah does in 2020 and stuff. But we're doing this with we've been doing this with the cast of Queer as Folk. And tonight, Peter Paige is joining us, and if you've been under a rock, then you do not realize that he's also been behind the camera over at ABC Family, where he's the creator and executive producer of ABC Family's The Fosters, which is fantastic. We can talk to him about that as well. So, without any further ado, let's just bring him right on. So, welcome to the show, Peter.
Hi there. How are you, Doug?
I'm doing good, it's so good to hear your voice. It's been a while, for us fans. So first off, just how are you doing? How's life going?
I'm great. I'm tired. I'm busy. There is no busy like showrunner busy, but I'm fantastic. I'm happy and healthy and doing work that I'm proud of and surrounded by people I love. So what more can you ask for?
Exactly, and this is a big project you've come up with, and it's very highly successful. And I see a lot of the different comments, during the, I'm not watching the current ones that are on the Fosters because I'm saving them on my DVR and then watch them all at once because I've kind of grown, Netflix and DVRs have, created this, passion where you can just do mega watching all at once. But I've watched all the season up until the premiere, and this is a fantastic show. So tell us how you came about it, how you came up to create such a great show.
Well, I started after Queer as Folk. I got a writing partner, and we started working together, and we sold a bunch of stuff, a bunch of pilots, and set up some movies at studios and things like that. But nothing had gotten made, and finally we got I don't know, it had been about 5 years we've been working together, and every year we sort of sat down and went, well, what do we want to write about? And we looked around at the television landscape, and we're like, there are no good family dramas on right now. There's Parenthood, which I love, but there was nothing else. And we thought, we love family drama, so let's do a new family drama. And what kind of family drama would we like to do? What about a sort of traditional family drama about a non-traditional family? Then we talked about maybe doing a gay dad's show that maybe I would act in. But it was already Modern Family was doing that, and The New Normal was about to come on, and we sort of said, maybe that's being handled. But what has not been done in any kind of meaningful way is two women creating a family at the center of a show. And hence The Fosters was born. And anytime you're talking about sort of two women creating a family, you have to talk about how did they create it? Where those kids come from? So we put a little bit of all of that in. We've got Brandon, the biological son. We've got Mariana and Jesus, our adopted Latino twins, and then we've got Callie and Jude, these foster kids who are sort of foisted upon them, who become such an important part of the family.
Okay. Well, it's getting nothing but great reviews. I mean, especially when I set it on, I always follow the hashtag on Twitter, and it's just you've got so much love out there. And I'm sure you see it and you can feel it. Did you think that your little idea would branch off to something? It's pretty big.
Well, thank you. We've been very, very lucky, and I'm certainly humbled and grateful for all the fan support. I always believed in the show. I always loved the show. It was a show that I thought, I wanted to make a show that I would want to watch and that a family would want to watch together, that the adolescents and the adults would all be engaged by the questions and conversations held within. So I certainly hoped it would be well received, much the way I felt about Queer as Folk. I had a good feeling. I hoped, but you never know. You never know. And the network has been fantastic and very supportive, and the show kind of continues to grow. So we couldn't be luckier.
Yeah. So how many more episodes for the rest of this season are left? We did 11 in Season 1B, and Episode 4 of those 11 aired this week. So okay.
We're not quite halfway through the season.
All right, perfect. And now, when I was looking at the different production people that are a part of it. Of course, Jennifer Lopez is a part of it. But is Joanna Johnson the same Joanna Johnson from the ABC's The Bold and or CBS's The Bold and Beautiful?
It is indeed the same Joanna Johnson, soap opera superstar Joanna Johnson.
Yeah,
She created Hope and Faith, that Kelly Ripa Faith Forward sitcom years ago, and that was her moment. That was when she sort of transitioned from acting to writing primarily. She still acts. In fact, she worked on Bold and Beautiful this morning. But she's been, for the last decade, she has been writing and running and helping run TV shows. And when we sold the show, the network wanted us to bring on someone to help show run alongside us, and so we picked Joanna from a collection of people that they sent to us, and boy did we make the right decision. She's really fantastic.
I'm not familiar with her. I know of Hope and Faith, but I wasn't familiar with more of her behind-the-scenes stuff. But I'm a CBS fan. I've grown up watching Bold and Beautiful and Young and Restless on CBS, and love her character on there. So I'm glad to see that she's doing, got her hands in a couple different pies. And then, of course, how amazing it is. You probably never imagined in a million years you'd be working with Jennifer Lopez. What a treat that should be.
Yeah, it sure is. And it happened through this crazy series of circuitous circumstances, but what an ally she has been, what a supporter of the show, what an incredible, megaphone for us, and what a gift. I can't say enough good things about her.
Yeah. Now, when you were coming up with casting, did you have your hand in that, or was that someone else's job? Because you've got, I can't imagine anybody else playing each one of these roles.
Well, that no, of course, that is one of the biggest parts of making a pilot is casting. You spend hours and hours and hours. There's a casting director who sees thousands of people, and then you see hundreds of people, and from those hundreds of people you call them down to 2 or 3 for each role, and you take those to the network, and you all sit down and you hash it out and you make the choices. So yes, we were heavily involved with casting for the show.
Yeah, Sherry and Terry are both just fantastic as Lena and Stephanie. So I just love them, and I know of Terry's work and before this as well. So this is just I'm glad that you're part of something that is once again kind of groundbreaking in a way, because we haven't really had, as you were talking about, we haven't really had a female lesbian relationship TV show like we had with Modern Family, The New Normal, Will and Grace, and of course Queer as Folk. We had Melanie and Lindsay, but they were kind of just like a sub story to the core.
Right, and Arizona, Callie and Arizona on Grey's Anatomy, they're out there. But to put them at the center of a show and make them the emotional cornerstone was new and long overdue in my estimation. Long overdue.
Yes, and it's good, and our community has come such a long way. 16 states we can get married in now, and we're seeing more and more of it on the television. Because for me, when I first saw Queer as Folk, I was so excited because I was like, at that time I was in my mid-20s, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can actually see people I relate to, and I can understand, and I can feel what they're going through, or I'm sure that was a lot of things at the time people were thinking, because there wasn't anything else on like that. Will and Grace was on, but that was like a comedic role. But to see it like a soap opera drama like Queer as Folk was just such, as they say, groundbreaking. And we all wish that it could have lasted forever, because there's not been anything like that since then. Now we do have The Looking, which is on HBO, which is brand new, and it's just now getting its run started. So I'm glad to see that it's getting more and more recognized, and we're getting more television shows. It is 2014, but we still have a long way to go in most areas as well, sadly.
Absolutely. You certainly can't take anything for granted, but when you look back, you have to go, holy smokes. Showtime, they were prepared for bomb threats the day that they premiered Queer as Folk. Bomb threats. Mm-hmm. And now it's like, oh, there's another gay show, great. Like, it's fantastic. The change in attitudes. And if you had told me when I was 15, which was almost 30 years ago now, which is hard to believe, but it's the truth, that we would be getting married, I would have said, I don't even understand. Like, that's not possible. Mm-hmm. It's just the gay civil rights movement is the most expeditious movement in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. We've moved more quickly through bigger change than anyone ever has. And while we cannot stop, we certainly do need to look around every once in a while and go, it's getting better. We're making a difference.
Yes, yes, it is. And speaking of the normal, I was really sad to see that wasn't picked up. I thought Ryan Murphy is a god when it comes to creation of television, and it was a fun show, and I was really hoping to see more of it. But now we have the Fosters, so we can relate to that every day now that it's on.
Fair enough. They're very different shows, but yes.
Well, yeah. But just that, for me, I'm kind of envious. I wish there was a show every night of the week where I could watch. Now, I mean, a lot of people, you can watch stuff on Logo or Hear TV, but I rather have, instead of quality, I'd rather have quantity. I'd rather have quality. And you have come up with something really great. So I'm so thankful that little Miss Emmett Honeycutt is behind something so fantastic as this.
Well, thank you very much. I feel very blessed to be a part of one hit show is hitting the lottery, and to be a part of two is it humbles me daily.
Yeah. Now we were talking just a bit before this. The reason why I was doing these shows is because 14 years ago in December, Queer as Folk debuted, and now it's been off the air for about 9 years now. And I was just going through watching the series over the holidays, and I was like, I wonder if I could, I've been doing my show for a couple years now. I've had over 300 celebrity shows on, and I was like, I want to reach out and see if I can get these guys on and see what they're up to, what they're working on, so that way we can help support their current projects. Michelle and Scott were just on Fox's show The Bones last couple weeks ago, and of course you're doing this, and Robert's over on The Tomorrow People on CW, and Gail's working on a brand new film called Thirst. So, everybody's got some stuff going on, and I was like, it'd be great timing to do. Well, once I got Gail on first, which I thought was going to be the hardest one to get, the fans have just been all over me. Thousands of fans from all over the world that I had no idea existed that have such a huge, amazing connection to Queer as Folk. I had no idea there was fan fiction that was continuing the show online elsewhere out there in the world. There's people right now that are listening in from Spain and Portugal and Europe and Asia. There's everybody there.
Russia.
And Russia. Of all places, too.
At the last Queer as Folk convention, one of the largest contingents was from Russia, and the second largest was probably from China.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and in those countries where civil rights are still, everyone knows what's going on in Russia right now in terms of LGBT issues, and to know that there are people out there who are identifying with Queer as Folk and attaching to it, who can help precipitate some change, is really, really meaningful to me.
Yeah. Well, and then like I said, also, for those who don't know that's listening, if you have Netflix, it's on Netflix now, so you can stream it anytime you want, so you can get your fix of it as well. And if you've never seen it before, which a lot of people seem to not, because a lot of people I'm meeting have watched it, you can to catch up now for sure. It's got this little legs. It's just grown, and it's continued to be great. There's a group of you guys that are going to I just went blank on where you're going next. The convention.
Bilbao, Spain.
Yes, that's right, Spain. And you were in Cologne, and you were here in LA not too long ago. And these conventions, I'm finding out from all the different guests I've had, people from all over the world fly to these to be able to be with you guys in that convention. So that must be overwhelming as well, and humbling just to be part of that convention. I can't tell you. We finished Queer as Folk a long time ago, almost a decade ago, and to have people still connected to it and still clamoring for more it's just lovely. It's just really lovely. And I've met the fans have been just fantastic. They're wonderful, warm, kind, engaged people, and we're so lucky. Yes. Now, when I had Gail on, I had mentioned to him, since he was the first one I had on, I was like, is there anything similar to what the Veronica Mars people did with the fans who did a Kickstarter program to get a film made, and now there's a theatrical film coming out for Veronica Mars, and he said that him and Scott and Michelle have talked about it and interacted and thought if the writing is good, if somebody can come up with a good thing about where these group of friends are 10 years later, apparently not at Babylon anymore, but if a good script came along that they would love to get started and they've all would love to jump back into it. Would you like to resurrect Emmett just to see where he could be 10 years from now, or from them?
Yes, I would. It terrifies me, the thought of kind of, slipping on those leather pants again. But and the diet I would have to go on would be just just awful. But yes, I would love to. I'd love to know where he's at, and it was one of the great experiences of my life working with all those people, and so to get to go play with them even for a few weeks while making a movie would be an absolute gift. So, yes, if a good script came along and there was real money to actually make it and make it quality, I'd be the first one there on the first day.
Yeah, and if they did the Kickstarter like they did with Veronica Mars, we would raise more money than Veronica Mars, because this little show that came to Showtime, has brought, like we said, just fans worldwide. We'd all donate our lives and our left foot probably just to get it made, because we really would like to see where they're at now. And so if I just ask, where do you think Emmett is right now, or what's he doing now, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, the thing about Emmett is he was so, he was such a little, fluttermouse. Is that a word? I don't even know. He was so he's like a kitten, like completely distracted by the next new thing. My hope for Emmett is that he's in a relationship now and settled down. Maybe that's just because that's my hope for me. I don't know, but that he's found somebody who gets him enough and can let him be kind of all the different versions of himself that he needs to be, and can stand with him through all of that. And professionally, I don't think Emmett was ever very professionally driven. I think he liked to do what he liked to do, and his ego wasn't really wrapped up in whether he was a naked cater waiter or a news personality, or throwing high-end parties. It didn't really matter to him. What mattered to him is that he had the time and energy to be with the people he loved, and that he was getting joy. So I don't know which of his 85 different career paths he might be on at the moment, but I certainly hope that he's surrounded by good people and a lot of love.
Yes, definitely. As we progress, there's a lot of Twitter questions. So I'm gonna pick them as I see them. That is appropriate to our discussion here. And Barry Bookage says, please ask Peter if we'll ever see him in front of the camera on The Fosters.
I don't know. We'll see. Every once in a while a role comes up and I'll think maybe I could do that, but then by the time we get to actually casting it, there's a billion reasons that I can't. So I would love to. I don't miss much about the business of acting, but I do miss those moments between action and cut. And I wouldn't mind having a few of those on The Fosters with such an extraordinary cast.
Oh yes, it would be good. And you brought on, you brought on Scott. Is there anybody else that you have a role that if you thought about, could bring one of your other castmates on from Queer as Folk like you did Scott?
If the right thing presents itself, believe me, they'll be my first phone calls. There are few people in the world that I love and respect as much. So
yeah.
Given the right circumstances, the right setup, yes, we will find our ways to work together again.
Yeah, that is good. It was so neat to see him in that, and just on, I don't know if you saw Bones last week or the week before last, just to see Michelle and Scott. They didn't have any interaction with each other; they were on different storylines, but just to see them in the same show within the hour was just so great. And I can't believe how beautiful.
So great. So great.
How beautiful Michelle is. I saw that long hair. I wasn't expecting that because I hadn't seen her for a while, and she was such a treat to talk to last week. For anybody that's out there that hasn't listened to it, be sure to go to our website and listen to it. It was such a treat. She likes Melanie. There was so much of her I can see in Melanie. So with you,
yeah, she is. But then there's a whole side of her that's completely un-Melanie.
Yeah,
there's a whole side of Michelle that is silly and girly in a way that Melanie never let herself be.
Yeah, exactly. Now, was there any comparisons between you and Emmett when you got the role? Was there, how did you make Emmett your own?
Yes, of course there are ways that Emmett and I overlap. I don't think as an actor you get a job unless there's some, visceral connection to the character. The thing that struck me about Emmett, the thing that I loved about him, and the thing that I really built the whole 5 seasons on was that I as I was reading the pilot, I was like, this seems to be an effeminate gay man who actually likes himself. You know, he had his doubts along the way. He had his moments. Certainly, the See the Light story jumps to mind. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, Emmett really thought he was pretty great, and that was something I had never seen on TV or in film before. Effeminate gay men were always so freaking self-loathing that I just read this sort of glimmer of something in the script, or maybe it was that I just noticed this lack of something. I was like, well, where's the scene where he tells us how much he hates himself? You know, where's the scene where he dies? Where's the scene where he's the one who's diagnosed with HIV because he's a big queen? And because that wasn't there, I thought, that's exciting, that's revolutionary, and that's what I'm going to hang my hat on. So that's where we started, and Dan and Ron, who created and ran the show, they saw that and they wrote for that. You know, they wrote into that. They challenged it and then they celebrated it, and that was such a gift, such a pleasure. You know, one of the really great things about working in television is you and the writers are sort of passing a ball back and forth, this ball of the character. You know, they write words and then you inhabit them, and they see, oh, he did something there that I wasn't expecting. That wasn't what I thought when I wrote that line. I thought that was a joke, but look, Peter made it a real meaningful moment between him and Michael and Ted. Oh, that's nice. Let me write into that. You know, and then they get to know you as a human being, and they start writing in your little eccentricities and quirks and things. And so it was just such a joy and something I will never ever forget, and will certainly be one of the highlights of my whole life.
Yes. Now, I will say, of all the characters, Emmett had some of the best quotes, and I can't think of them off the top of my head, but there's so many just wonderful quotes. And was any of those ad-libbed, or were they like really, written in the script? Because it seems like some of them were so good they just came off like that.
You're very sweet. I would never presume. I mean, we did ad-lib some here and there, but I would never presume that one of the great quotes you're thinking about did not come from the writers. Never in a billion years. I definitely threw down some good one-liners here and there, but all credit goes to the writing staff. All credit.
Yeah. Someone's asking, do you have a favorite Emmett quote? I mean, of course, it's been a long time, so not everybody can remember probably everything, but do you have one that you can remember?
I can barely remember my name. But you know what though? My favorite quote from the whole series is probably Ted's speech to Emmett in the See the Light sequence.
Oh yeah.
I think God loves every one of us, every single grain of sand, every faggot.
Yeah.
That speech is just doesn't get any better than that. And I have favorite moments I remember. I don't know that I can think of them as quotes. I loved the airplane scene with George's death. That scene, I just thought, wow, you will never see this scene anywhere else. You know, it starts off as kind of naughty and sexy, and then it gets a little comic and silly, and then it gets really funny, and then it gets really awful and scary, and then it gets heartbreaking. And to be able to travel that much terrain in one short, 2-minute scene is just such a gift for an actor. And I've always loved the scene where Emmett goes to Brian to get him to help Ted, and it starts with I promised myself this wasn't going to turn into a Lana Turner movie, but it looks like that's the direction it's headed, so I'm going to make Lana proud. And he begs Brian to help his boyfriend, and it's just beautiful writing. It was so much fun to inhabit. I'll also always love when Emmett ran into Blake in season 1 and said, "If you break his heart, I will break your face."
Yeah. Fantastic. Now, when you just mentioned the speech between Ted and Emmett with the See the Light, when I asked Scott that, he said the same identical thing of his favorite quote of the whole 5 seasons. So that really must have touched a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, it was and at the time, by the way, that was a pretty revolutionary thing to say. God loves faggots too. I mean, that was pretty outrageous 15 years ago. It's still pretty outrageous.
Yeah.
It's still pretty outrageous, but it's also really, really true and really beautiful.
Now, when you get the script and you find out that Emmett, who's, flame is still shining bright, or whatever that quote is going to be dating a girl and switching gears, literally, what was your reaction when you found out that they were going to go that path?
I remember thinking, like, all right, well, how's this going to work? And how do I justify this? How do I switch the guy who I've always thought was more comfortable in his skin than any of them and make him the most uncomfortable of all of them?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought what they did and did exquisitely is they set it up because of the HIV scare that Emmett had, where he found himself making all these promises, all that bargaining he was doing with God. I thought they sort of backed him into an interesting corner and then presented him with exactly the wrong information.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, you as much as people sort of went like, oh, come on, I know a lot of guys who went through things like that, a lot of them. Especially in my age group. I mean, my hope is that younger generations, it will become harder and harder to believe that anyone ever took that journey. But in my generation, a lot of guys had that detour through some sort of ex-gay, reparative, love the sinner, hate the sin kind of journey. And so I'm really glad we did it.
Yeah, it was good, and so many different things that the show told, the stories that it told, helped so many different people over the years and continues, as we talked about. So, I mean, Dan and Ron just were phenomenal, and I mean, nothing could ever replace such a historical show such as Queer as Folk, and I'm just so thankful that it's available on DVD and now streaming for people to see, because there's so many great things that you can learn from it. And I think, I mean, if Queer as Folk would have came out, say, now, with social media, with Twitter and Facebook, things would have. I wonder how things would have been with the technology and the advances we've made in our culture as well. If what the show would have been like. I mean, who knows what it would have been like now versus what it was 10 years ago or 14 years ago.
I know it's almost impossible to imagine. It's just such a different world, and pardon the hubris in this, but I think part of the reason it's a different world and part of the reason that people have a different understanding of gay issues is because of Queer as Folk. So are you imagining a world where Queer as Folk didn't exist in 2000? Or are you imagining a world where it did exist in 2000 and there's another version of it now? Do you know what I mean? It's, Queer as Folk, introduced a whole breadth of vocabulary and mechanics and logistics to the American public. I really think Queer as Folk had a lot to do with people knowing what a top and a bottom is in the general populace.
Exactly.
And much, 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 much more. I remember friends of mine calling me up season 1 and going, I never realized you could have sex face to face. Friends of mine. So, it's I certainly think it opened a lot of eyes and a lot of doors. And by the way, you should have Dan and Ron on the show.
I would love to. I'll see if I can get their contact information and get them on here as well. I think that'd be great to get into their heads of how they, I've got the talent. Now I'd like to see the minds behind the creation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now,
they don't get enough credit, and they don't get asked to talk about the show enough. They really what they did was very special, and they should be celebrated for it.
Yes, well then I will definitely try to do that, because I think it's important, because without them, who knows where all of you would be right now? Who knows? We don't know. So a lot of funny quotes are being popped up on Twitter. One of them is from Wingnut1974, which is Lauren. She says, and it says, "Little Mary Sunshine died. I'm a little Mary. Go fuck yourself."
Yeah, that was a good one too.
Good. Thank you, Lauren. She's the queen of quotes, so she'll hook us up.
I almost guarantee that Ron wrote that line. I almost guarantee that Ron wrote that line. Ron Cowan.
And the scene with this person is talking about the scene with you and the girl with the scene, the light. You guys are in bed together trying to figure out how to have sex, and she said that scene was hilarious with the girl quote topping Emmett. Wait a second. She didn't top me. I was on top of her, and we were in the middle of very awful, uncomfortable sex. Oh, that was.
I remember it well. That was my first full frontal.
Yeah. That was funny. I felt so bad because I was like, Emmett, come on now, just be yourself. Because at that time, ironically, I've always been gay, but I went through a pretty traumatic event, and so I tried to change myself, and I got married, and I kind of related to that scene, kind of like, I don't want to do this, but I'm trying to be straight. So, and that happened like maybe a year before that episode aired. So I was like, I can understand you, but come on, girl, let's just get back on track to who you really are. And thank God you found. You literally saw the light.
Right. See, there it is.
Yep. Now, Emmett had a wider range of lovers. He had his best friend Ted, the older guy George, and then the hot jock Drew. Serena asked, who is the best lover for Emmett, Ted, Georgie, or Drew?
Well, I'm going to get in trouble because I'm still friends with all of them. But, I mean, to me, believe it or not, I actually think in my mind, if I had to pick one of them who, like, Emmett would end up with, it would be Drew.
Yeah.
It would be Drew. I mean, George is dead, so George is dead. And George was a great love, but it was a different kind of love, I think. And Teddy, same thing. Teddy was a great love, but a different kind of love, really, at the end of the day. And Drew, I mean, I certainly think Emmett's hottest sex scenes were with Drew. I remember Gail came up to me one day and said, I just saw the scene with you and Drew in the hotel room. And I said, oh, yeah, how was it? He goes, it's the most graphic sex scene we've ever done on Queer as Folk. And I was like, what? And he goes, I've done a lot of sex scenes. I had a lot of graphic sex scenes. That was the most graphic sex scene we've ever done on Queer as Folk. I was like, what is it? And there was something about it. It was just that big, wide shot of the whole room, and he's just pounding me across the bed. And, I thought, well, Gail has a point.
Yes. I mean, coming from that is surprising coming from him because, from the very first scene we see him and Justin in bed telling him not to shoot to all, to all the ones that he did. I mean, to hear that from Gail, that's pretty funny. But yeah, you had some, throughout the whole thing, I was like, wow. Now, of course, you can't forget jerkatwork.com or .net. Those scenes. How in the world did you get to those scenes? You were like bravo.
That was my least favorite story. That was my least favorite storyline in 5 years. I hated doing those. I hated them. It was cold. We were in a warehouse. I I was like one boner away from actually doing porn. I hated it. I hated it. No disrespect to the writers. They knew I hated it, and I understand why they did it. But that was the one story in 5 years that I just never felt any real meaningful connection to. Yeah,
I know. And when I was talking to Scott about it, because you guys work so close together with that, he also agreed that was the toughest. He said he would leave, and he would just be around all these people with their naked, and it just, he would go home like feeling like he was just full of sex, and so yeah, I felt so poor Emmett. I mean, doing the character. Doing that and having to do that all day for 8 hours to, online. And now we see that it happens every day in real life. Now we have people that do that for legit. So I can't.
I know. Well, that was it was one of those stories where I was like, at first I resisted it. At first I was like, I don't want to do this, guys. And then I started talking to all the kids who worked background for us, and they all did it. They all did it. They were all having sex on the internet for money. And I just thought, well, this is a real thing. This is a real thing, and that was always our barometer on the show was, is it real? Is it real? Have I seen it? Do I know somebody who's been through it? If so, then I got to do it.
Yeah. Let's see here. Lisa Source Rex. She's the dinosaur that always calls in. I just laugh at her name. She's at Lisa Source Rex. She says, what was one of your favorite or most memorable scenes to shoot on Queer as Folk?
Well, that George airplane scene, it was incredibly hard to shoot because it was a teeny tiny room, and he was killing me, pounding my knees into the sink. But I also, it was just such an amazing scene to ride it. But some of the other scenes that jumped to mind, saying goodbye to Drew, when Emmett and Ted had their big blow-up breakout, and they ran into each other at Babylon, and Brian pulls Emmett out onto the dance floor and makes him dance with him. That scene, for some reason, was incredibly satisfying and powerful to shoot. I loved when Emmett danced. Emmett danced with such purpose and such vitality, and it was such a part of who he was and his story at any given moment. You could tell kind of everything about where he was at by how he was dancing. And so I actually really loved shooting those scenes, probably more than any other member of the cast. I loved being in Babylon. I don't know. And that scene I mentioned with Gail, the Lana Turner scene, that scene with Blake, with Dean, where you break his heart, I'll break your face. Those were all really good ones. And I'm sure there's a dozen more if people started naming them. I would go, oh, yeah, that one too, that one too, that one too.
No, that's funny. As you're saying this, Lisa, who asked that question, said the scene with Emmett, before you actually answered, she said the scene where Emmett dances with Brian is one of my favorite scenes. Was that a fun one to shoot? It came out so funny. Quote, we're both tall.
Yes, we're both tall. That's true. Yes. Yes, it was always fun. Gail and I didn't work together a whole lot, but when we got to, there was such an interesting energy between those two characters. Gail and I as human beings love each other and get on like a house on fire. But Emmett and Brian had such an interesting thing. They were the two characters who were sort of living their lives really unapologetically. They were sort of two different kinds of alphas. So they had this kind of weird, begrudging respect for each other, even though on some level they didn't really like everything about each other. And it always created some interesting, kind of very sparky dynamic that was really, really fun to play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was good. And a lot of people didn't agree with the way that the show ended, where Brian's just dancing all by himself in Babylon on that table, or whatever it was he was dancing on. But when I had Gail on, he said that was a good way to end it. A lot of people there was another ending because I had Ryan Scott Green on, and he who played Brandon at the very end of the season 5, the last part of season 5. He said that there was a scene that was cut at the very end where Brandon walks out, and it kind of reenacts the first scene where Justin is out there on the light pole and some guy comes up to him, and that kind of like a restarting of the whole story again. So a lot of people didn't like that Justin and Brian didn't get together. A lot of people were okay with it because you can only wait for anybody in the world. You can only wait for somebody so long before you finally say screw it and move on. So that's why.
Yeah, and I mean, in my mind, the way it ended didn't mean that they didn't love each other and didn't mean that they weren't going to continue to love each other. It just meant that they weren't going to be able to love each other the way that other people maybe wanted them to.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think either one of them was really unhappy about it. I don't think either one of them would have taken it back or would have changed the other person. So so I found that satisfying. I understand that it didn't culminate in this kind of romantic rom-com guy on a white horse rides up, pretty woman kind of ending, but I thought it had a real integrity to it. Brian is a guy who always and forever, somehow, some way, needs to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was brave of Dan and Ron to embrace that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was brave.
Yeah. At Pack and Daddy, at Pack and Daddy says, my favorite quote is, "But I'd rather my flame burn bright than be some puny little pilot light." So that was the one I was trying to say a little bit ago. I couldn't remember that one, but that was one of the best ones of all.
That's the quote basically that got me the job. That speech was one of my audition scenes for the show.
Oh.
So that's a fantastic monologue, and that's honestly probably the germ of the entire character.
Mm-hmm. It is, and that was.
Rather my flame burn bright than be some puny little pilot light.
And you know what? I bet many boys and young men who watched that took that and used it for the rest of their lives and things, because that's such a great quote for living life, for who you are.
God, I hope so. God, I hope so.
All right, we're going to wrap up for you here. Rachel, this is about the Fosters. She says, "Tell Peter that my 10-year-old daughter and I love watching the Fosters together, and it provokes great discussions, and since the show deals honestly with many important topics, which issues is he still hoping to cover that haven't been?
Well, my God, we've covered so much. There's a few more coming in season 1B. Rachel, I mean, we are unafraid of an issue on the Fosters, that's for sure. So I don't know. We don't think of stories that way on the Fosters. We don't think like, oh, we've never done a story about illegal immigration. We think, oh, we've got a character who's got something's up with. She's got a secret. What could that be? What would be really hard to be to find out when you're 15? How about that your parents moved here illegally? That would be huge as a human being. So we're more interested in the humanity of it than the issues of it. As I said, we certainly don't back away from it when we find an issue that we want to engage with. But I can't give her a list of things we're planning on tackling. It always sort of comes out of character and psychology, and then we go, oh, here's a conversation that I'd be interested to hear.
Yeah.
So.
At Rio1013 says, what was the timing of filming Steph and Lena's wedding with respect to when the Supreme Court decision regarding Prop 8 came down?
We had already written that episode. We knew the Supreme Court decision was coming. There was a line in the script that said, Lena's father's speech at the wedding will be adjusted according to the Supreme Court decision. And the day before we shot their actual wedding was the day the Supreme Court decision came down. And while we were shooting their actual wedding, while we were shooting them doing their vows, the Prop 8 plaintiffs were getting married in the L.A. and San Francisco city halls. It was absolute, utter, universal magic. We were the very first TV show to do a post-DOMA same-sex marriage, and I couldn't be more proud of that.
Wow, that is fantastic. Congratulations on that. And
thank you.
That's excellent. Let's see, I'm going to pick one more, guys, because we got to wrap up. But let's see here. Elaine says, do you see Emmett as being a type of Vic several years down the road? See Emmett as being quite wise in his own way?
I think Emmett was always really wise. Emmett was not book smart, but Emmett was soul smart. Emmett could read a human being like a really good, Judith Krantz novel. Emmett just knew what you were thinking and what you were feeling and what you needed to hear, and that's what made him such an extraordinary friend to those people. So yes, I think Emmett it will have lots of wisdom to impart, at least emotionally, if nothing else. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Serena, okay, you just got this one in. I'll do this one, Serena, for you. How much importance was Aunt Lula to save Emmett in his adolescence? Aunt Lula, bless her heart.
Are you kidding? I mean, Aunt Lula, she was everything. I think she kept him alive. I think she's the reason he didn't hate himself. Because when you hear stories about his growing up, they were just so horrific. But to have that one unrelenting champion, I mean, I think it really can change somebody's life, and I certainly think it changed Emmett's. And I would hope that everyone who's listening to this show is determined to be an Aunt Lula for somebody, so that they grow up without any shame or any fear of being who they are.
And she continues to ask, and this is about the Fosters, did you mention Uncle Vic's death in some way in your last episode of the Fosters with the death of Steph's dad?
We didn't. I certainly remember that episode, and when we knew that Dad was dying, I wasn't afraid to steal from the best. Let's say that.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. So people are clever. They're quick on this. They're really invested in this. Awesome. Well, let's just end with one quote. I may be a slut, but at least I'm an honest slut.
You know what's so funny is I've seen that quote on the internet, and I forgot that I said it. Thank you so much, Doug. It was a pleasure.
Yes, this was so much fun, and I can't wait to see what's next for you. Now, I know you're extremely busy with the Fosters. I did want to mention real quick a project you did right after Queer as Folk called Say Uncle, and I must say that was a fantastic film that you wrote and directed. For anybody that's out there that hasn't seen it, it stars Peter and Captain Najimy, and it's a really great film. Real quick, can you say anything about that, how that came about? I just thought it was a great film, great indie film.
I can't get it. I mean, how it came. I decided I wanted to start writing and directing while I was on Queer as Folk, and that was the movie that came out of it. It took a lot of years to get that script done, and I managed to attach some really terrific actors. I'm very proud of it for a first movie. And if you haven't seen Leaving Barstow, which is my second movie as a director, which stars Michelle Clooney, you really have to. She gives an extraordinary performance, and it's a really beautiful, very different kind of film from Say Uncle, both of which I'm very proud.
Well, of course. Everything you touch is gold, dear, so I can't wait to see what's...
that is simply not true. If that were true, I'd have a big gold cock.
Oh, goodness. All right.
Anyway.
You're the best, Peter.
All right, Doug. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye now.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed our chat. It was only supposed to be a half hour, so that's why we had to wrap it up. He's very, very busy, as you know. But thank you so much. Just to remind you that if you go to onairwithdouglas.com, you click on the archives, and you can listen to our show with Gail and Michelle and Rob and Robert and Scott, and now we have Peter, and we're working on Sharon Glass and Randy Harrison right now, and also Sherry Miller, who played Jennifer Taylor, Justin's mom. So I'm trying to get as many on here as possible. A couple said no, so no is a no. I'm not going to press anybody, but at least I've been lucky to get most of the core characters on the show. So thank you very much for listening. I tried to get to as many questions as possible, but when I saw the clock tick in, I was like, oh, we got to go. So we'll have him back in the future, maybe after the season wraps, and we can talk about the season more in depth. So as usual, with every QAF cast member star, this is how we leave the show. So good night, everybody.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, take it down. Thanks for listening to tonight's show. Be sure to see what's coming up next at www.onairwithdouglas.com. With over 240 shows in the archives, take a look around and listen to all the great guests you missed. Follow the show on Twitter @OnAirWithDoug. Until next time, have a great night.